Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to start off again with a discussion about the La Nina, and we've noticed that throughout much of this winter and fall, it's really done what typical La Ninas do, which is to produce more frequent, large ridges of high pressure here, getting the flow to do something a bit like this, and have it curl on out here into the parts of New England. And that highly variable jet stream pattern across the west has been the culprit for delivering the pattern that we've seen. Now, our current La Nina continues to fade, especially over here in this side of the western Pacific back into the central Pacific, but it's got quite a stronghold still in place over here as you approach South America. And we expect this La Nina to fade. The long-range European model right now is continuing to show that through February into March and April that those ocean temperatures are going to continue to back off, and we'll be approaching what we call INSO-neutral conditions, likely by Northern Hemisphere spring, and maybe even by late summer start to see weak El Nino conditions return. But the biggest problem we've had with our La Nina right now is that it's favored again, that big ridge in place right here. So the flow, which is typical of a La Nina, comes around like this. Okay, what we've missed is this piece right in through here. Normally, during winter, at some points we develop a subtropical branch of the jet stream. It tends to come right in here into parts of California. It often shifts a little bit farther to the east, and it is the part of the jet stream pattern in a winter that will really just deliver the moisture when you need it into the south. And I'm talking, when I say south, I'm covering from California all the way to South Carolina. If you just take a look at what we've had so far this month of January, ridging across the west has kept this part of California and Nevada quite dry. We've also seen drought expansion happening in the southern plains, despite some great snows we saw early in this week that really outperformed forecasts, especially right here in this part of Kansas. We have had, as typical of La Nina, wetter conditions in through this area. But we need to ask ourselves, is the La Nina going to keep its tight grip on this pattern as we go forward? By the way, just to show you real quick the snow that was in here, this is the last 3 days of snowfall, and you can see that there was a band in here that picked up, in some places, over a foot of snow out of that. And what's important to know is that when you melt all that down, though, we're still talking about less than a ½ inch of liquid equivalent. And it's going to melt. We got some warm conditions that are coming into this area very soon. And why I'm so concerned about this is that without having the subtropical bit of the jet stream or getting troughs to just eject out of the Four Corners states, we've not been able to return good moisture to the southern plains. And it's really showing up in the Drought Monitor. The latest Drought Monitor was updated today. It's still at about 71% of the country in drought, but what I always look at here is where has the Drought Monitor changed? And we continue to see that throughout this fall and winter, we've expanded the drought that's in the south. Now, what I'm concerned about is as we progress forward, the National Weather Service is also concerned about this drought migrating a bit north into Nebraska. If it migrates this direction, north and east, or into Missouri and Arkansas as well, that's a major cause of concern for me once we get later into spring. I'm talking about April and May. Because if this drought area expands going into spring, what tends to happen is it continues into early summer when we lose the whole strength of the jet stream anyway, and pushes a much weaker flow farther to the north, and that kind of robs much of the midsection of the whole United States from having good summer moisture return. Now that's pretty far out there. We're going to keep investigating that. But that's why I'm so interested to see how quickly this La Nina fades. All right. Now from here, I want to talk about the MJO, because the MJO has since removed itself as a more dominant predictor looking forward. It's collapsed. It's here in the null phase. Spent a lot of time in phase 7. That was one of the main reasons for that big ridge that was over the west, and same thing for phase 8, but it's collapsed. And this is the 15-day forecast, and this is the 30-day outlook. And we do see something quite, interesting happening here. I had at one point thought the MJO was going to pop back out into phase 7 or phase 8. That's typically preferred in a La Nina winter. But there's better indications that it's going to show up somewhere on this side of the diagram, which is over by Australia. Specifically, I think about phase 5. Now, just going to let you know, I have some reasons for that. It has to do with the trade wind behavior. You can see the stronger trade winds here over the next 15 days. Those are the blue-green colors. And the warmer colors would be where we have slower trade winds or even westerly wind bursts, where they meet where the air is going to rise, and that sits right over this area. So if the MJO does pop out into that phase, why I hate to say it, but I'm kind of wish casting that it'll do that, is because it would give us this, a ridge that backs up farther to the west. You end up getting a bit of a blocked flow pattern, but it tends to be higher below, producing troughs that are off the coast of California. Now that would deliver moisture to California. It also produces a ridge that sits here, which means that the jet stream flow has to come around this trough and run over that one. Guess what? That is that southwest flow we're talking about. This pattern still gives us clippers and shots at colder air too. And so overall, I would like to see the MJO trend toward phase 5. Could be critical to returning that moisture to the southern plains. But as it currently stands, this is the way things look about 10 days from now. And the European model is not producing that high over low setup. In fact, it's trying to return a ridge, which gives us more convergent flow. And therefore, we go back over drier here where there's convergence, and where we have to go around the ridge, it tends to be drier in the west as well. So we're not seeing that just yet in these near-term model runs. But what about the longer term? Well, one of the issues with the longer-term model runs is that they tend to kind of be persistent with what the near term's giving them. And what you see here is that looking out from February 10th to March 10th, that ridge is going to hang on too close to the west in the European model. That produces systems that kind of eject into the Mid-South and head up toward New England. We talked a lot about that the last couple of weeks, that this was going to be a probable path of storm systems in February. But what I don't like is take a look at our cotton belt here. Drier conditions, and drier into Texas. It's also drier in California, Nevada, and parts of Arizona. Now, will this verify? I have a lot of, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and I have low confidence. And all of that is essentially based upon the fact that I think that if the trade winds continue to exhibit this behavior, that we're going to see a more dominant signal popping out here rather than in other phases. Now, I could definitely be wrong about this, but that's the number one thing I'll be watching going forward in this forecast. The other thing about this pattern is it tends to deliver more of that mild air on the kind of on the high plains, or the whole of the plains. So you end up getting flow that again does this. That's downslope wind, compressionally warms, and that's what tends to deliver those warmer conditions. Now the near term, that's your long term. In the near term, we got other kind of fish to fry here. This trough's going to exit east tomorrow, produce a nor'easter. It's going to run up the coast. Talk about the details of that in a second. Then I'm watching 1, 2, 3 different troughs. One's a cutoff low, one's here in the Gulf of Alaska, another one's up here in the Arctic. They're going to work together to develop a big open wave midweek next week, lasting almost to the end of the week right here in the middle part of the United States. Now that could deliver some snow into places that we desperately need it. This is again just a look at your snow cover so far, or total snow that we've seen so far this winter. Now again, I only make my color boat to 40 inches, so of course there's way more than that in the mountains in the west, even though it's been dry in the month of January. But there are big places we need to build this in. And by the way, that's the recent snow right there from earlier in this week. I often find it more instructive to look at the percent of normal. And what we're about to see here is with this system midweek next week coming into this area and then ejecting, we could deliver quite a bit of precipitation in here, and some of that will be coming down as snow, another a bit will be ice. And that nor'easter is going to finally pack in some snow here where we've been in deficit as well. You see, put that all together and I can show you this 10-day outlook from the European model. You can see the influences of the ridge in the west, hence the drier conditions. But you see that system that's trying to come out of this area, spreading some rain over some places that desperately need it. And our nor'easter is the cause of all this. So this quarter in through here, which we've now seen show up for, this has been in the forecast already for 2 weeks, is really starting to go active. And it's important we deliver that precip because the month of January was dry west, dry in the southern plains. This has been an area that has missed out on a lot of snow as of late. Much of the Midwest needs quite a bit more moisture as well. We've improved drought over in the Mid-Atlantic on this side of course, the Appalachian Mountains, but the Northeast needs more too. So let's see it. Here we go. Multi-model analysis, GFS on the left, European on the right. Now, some light snow. Watch this as we play this forward through Thursday into Friday. Here we go. This is Friday midday. Got some light snow that's still coming through this section of the country, maybe from Illinois to Pennsylvania. But at this point, our low is starting to take shape Friday at 6 p.m., getting into Saturday early morning. This is Saturday 6 a.m., and out here, let's just stop it at Saturday at noon. So what do we see? There was some snow coming through parts of, and I'll give you those totals in a minute, but coming through parts of North Carolina, Virginia. The GFS and the European both are taking this system pretty far offshore. And every little shift in its track, which is largely the result of the kind of the extent of the high pressure on the backside, could really change this forecast. But as it stands, looks like right along the shore is going to be the heaviest snows, right in through this area. Now that first system pulls on through, gets out here into the Canadian Maritimes by the time we get into late Saturday night and Sunday morning. And at this point, we're watching a couple other things. There's a little clipper that moves behind it over the Great Lakes. And then we see another one setting up here in the northern Canadian prairie. And then if you notice, over the weekend into early Monday, we now have another wave that's coming into the Pacific Northwest. That's good. We haven't been very active there. But it's that midweek system we're getting concerned about. So this is how it sets up. Lead wave, it's in both models, pushes through the Great Lakes. Okay, there's a pressure trough extended this entire distance. And what that is there's a big front right there. Now the wave is coming through and trying to ride along that front. So we're drawing in moisture around the high pressure cell that sits here, but this never actually closes off into a low. Now you can see that the GFS is quicker with the development of it. And then as we play this forward, the European catches up. The end result is, though, we could put down some pretty heavy snows in this area. It's in both models. There's also a threat for ice out of this system as we get into late next Tuesday and then into Wednesday and Thursday. Now, because no low is yet to close up in the isobars here, this system, it stays as a big open wave and presses east. It spreads a lot of rain over places that need it and some snow in places that need it as well. But again, the timing, let's just go back here. Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and it pulls right through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, quicker in the GFS, which is typical, and the European lets it linger here over eastern Ontario and Quebec, and then finally moves it out. Interestingly enough, now we're pretty far out there on the forecast. This is like Saturday, okay? Cold air, really cold air comes in behind it, and the GFS gets a little excited about it and tries to blow up another system. But this is so far out there, we've got to see a lot of things come together to make that happen. I just want to remind you too, there's still a lot that can change between now and next Tuesday through Thursday. Because remember, watching these 3 little features come through to make that all occur. But we can go through and look at the snowfall from it. This is what the European is saying right now. So you can see total snow here, forecast for that these next 2 systems. And this is what the GFS is saying. There are subtle differences, primarily in the speed at which the GFS advances the system forward. But again, this is the European, and this is the GFS. To show you the uncertainty, though, I just want to point out that the probability of getting more than 3 inches from the European ensemble, of course, it's very high with the nor'easter, all right, on the Great Lakes lake effect snow, but we're looking at this band right in through here. And you can see those probabilities are still sitting down here in the 40 to 50% range until you get into parts of Michigan. So there's still a lot of uncertainty because these waves are going to produce these short waves, they're still way offshore. We've got to get them on land to get them measured better to see what they're going to do. What I'm concerned about is this. I do not want to see overrunning in this system producing an ice storm from Oklahoma, maybe to Michigan. But all week long, as we've seen the models resolve this, they've continued to produce a large area where there's sub-freezing air at the surface and warmer air aloft, and that overrunning type of precipitation setup brings that in. So that's the system we're watching next week. We'll have more details on it over the weekend, of course. But what I'll also be watching is this. You've already seen this. That's day 10. The difference between the models beyond day 10 is in the advancement, how far to the east this trough goes, because the European kicks it way out there. The GFS has got a little bit farther back. Now that's going to really show up in the temperature pattern. But if you go back over into a flow pattern that does this, you know what you get. Convergent flow here, drier conditions. It's dry in the west, and systems that do form are offshore. So that's why the week 2 forecast from the GFS has the systems offshore, but drier and drier. And the European echoes that. So what about the temperatures? We'll take a look at this. What we've got happening in the next 7 days, okay? As this first system heads over toward the coast, that'll start to cool things off on Friday. So these are the temperatures on Friday, the 28th. It'll be a cold day along the East Coast on Saturday, but look at the downslope flow and the winds just warming things up here in the Midwestern United States. And then what we see is on Sunday, that warmer air continues to push north and east. And by Monday, it's occupying a big area of the country. Got the cooler air coming in on that trough in the northwest on Monday as well, and the cooler air is trying to exit east. But on Tuesday into Wednesday, there's the next Arctic front that undercuts that warmer air aloft and gives us that risk of having the ice. And after this winter storm goes through, the models, doesn't matter if you're looking at the GFS or the European, they're both bringing in really cold Arctic air into place. So that would be day 5 through 10 from the GFS. Here it is from the ECMWF. Where they split is after that. Remember, the GFS keeps the trough, as we showed, here. Therefore, it's colder almost everywhere east of the Rocky Mountains. Remember what the European did? Tossed the trough out. Let's try that again. Tossed it out here. So this whole region stays cold, and much warmer conditions start to build in from the prairie all the way down to the Cotton Belt down here in Texas and Oklahoma. That's how far south it gets. So we've got a lot of discrepancy already just in the next few days. And I'll be honest with you, if I had to blame this on something, I think it's the fact that we've lost our strongest signal, which was here at one point coming from the MJO. I think that's what's reducing predictability beyond 10 days. So I'll keep an eye on it and report back to you on Monday. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.